referendum against the no deal as opposed to Theresa May's deal. We don't even know what the question might be, but there's no doubt this is a big political shift, and it must go against absolutely everything Jeremy Corbyn himself believes in. I mean, he stood beside Tony Benn, who was one of the great anti-marketeers, as they were known 40 years ago, but anti-EU enthusiast Tony Benn in later life. I mean, here was Jeremy Corbyn back in January 2018.
What we've asked for and demanded in Parliament has been a meaningful vote in Parliament at the end of it. So MPs
but I'm talking about the people deciding, not Parliament.
And what happened with this bill was it was an undemocratic power grab by the government. We're not asking for a second referendum.
We are not asking for a second referendum.
OK.
He couldn't have been clearer. We are not asking for one, and he's never wanted one, but he has been in some trouble, hasn't he? I mean, he's had the Brexit. His shadow Brexit Secretary, Keir Starmer, repeatedly saying we must have the option for a second referendum. Hilary Benn, of course, saying much the same. And interesting, over the course of the last week, John McDonnell's position shifting on this, Tom Watson's position shifting on this, and, of course, Chucker and the gang have left the party. They formed the new independent group, and of course they absolutely want a second referendum. The Labour Party, the Parliamentary Labour Party, is overwhelmingly Remain. And in the end, Corbyn on the ropes, down in the polls, in trouble, is being forced into this position. We'll find out later exactly what he says, but we're told from the press office that he will say the reason they're going to back an amendment for a second referendum is to prevent a damaging Tory Brexit being forced on the country. As I say, details not fully clear, but it is a big, significant shift. So let me ask you, are Labour doing the right thing? If you think, yep, absolutely, what we need above all is a second referendum, they're now the party for me. Call 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think this is political suicide for the Labour Party, and you can text to 84850. And let me tell you that in the marginal seats that Labour needs to win, and I'm talking about the Midlands of England and the north of England, virtually every single one of those marginal seats were hefty Leave voting constituencies. I personally think this is an out-of-touch Parliamentary Labour Party forcing Corbyn into it. I think it'll be a disaster for them, even worse perhaps than some of the things that happened to them last week. And maybe it's time to at least celebrate a little bit that Labour's position at last has become a little bit clearer, in which case tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course Facebookers, you can watch us and you can comment there too. And all of this against the background of Donald Tusk and Theresa May doing press conferences today, and the prospect that I first raised here last August when I started saying that I thought extension to Article 50 was the most likely thing, that I think beginning to become more certain with every day that passes. We'll talk about that a bit later on. But for now, the Labour Party moving this week towards supporting an amendment in favour of a second referendum. Is Labour doing the right thing? Joe is a new caller from Thirsk in Yorkshire. Good evening, Joe.
Good evening, Nigel.
So is it the right thing?
I think it is, because Theresa May is now pushing for something that can't happen. We all know that the EU are not going to budge, and the only way to solve this would be to not put Remain on the ballot paper, but to have a vote between no deal and Theresa May's deal. And maybe, if the only way to get this through Parliament would be maybe to put Remain, but I wouldn't put Remain on the ballot paper.
And what if Parliament wouldn't back it without Remain, Joe?
I think there isn't a consensus in Parliament. There is no way they can decide something, and the way our system works is Parliament have to decide, and they're not doing it, and it's dangerous for the country that they can't come together and make a decision, so it has to go to the people.
I mean, there is a third option here, Joe, isn't there? There is a third option that we leave at 11 p.m. on March the 29th on WTO rules, having applied to Article 4 of the GATT Treaty, guaranteeing us at least 2 years of tariff-free trade to sort out a deal. Isn't that a reasonable answer?
Will Wednesday not stop that with the vote? That looks like now it will get passed that possibly no deal is going to be off the table.
Well, OK, so Joe, here is the key thing, and this is the key thing for all listeners to grab onto, all right? Whatever happens on Wednesday, whether it's this vote on a second referendum, but in particular, whether it's the Cooper amendment, which is now, I think, being backed by Letwin more than it's being backed by Bowles, even if Parliament votes to say that a no-deal scenario must be removed, it's really important, Joe, to grab hold of one thing. There is a piece of legislation in place. It is called the Withdrawal Act, and that piece of legislation puts Article 50 into UK law, and it makes it absolutely clear that unless the law of the land changes, we are leaving on March the 29th with or without a deal. And the only way the Cooper Amendment affects anything is if the government gives into it.
And that looks like now that will happen, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe Theresa May is made of stronger stuff than I think, but I have to say, Joe, I rather doubt it. Electorally, what does this do for Labour in the north of England?
In the north, where I'm from, I still think Labour are well away from getting into power in my constituency or any constituency around me, because we are such a Conservative stronghold. And as a Conservative voter myself, I can safely say backing a second referendum in a constituency where it was heavily Leave is just, for Labour, is electoral suicide.
I agree with you. Joe, I do agree with you. Thank you. John says to me on Twitter, it was discussed at the Labour Party conference. It's the next stage in the process. Yeah, John, I've seen this process coming for a very, very long time. In the end, Corbyn could not hold off his own parliamentary party. And maybe, just maybe, the Chuka-Umunna move last week, the Luciana Berger move last week, and the others, maybe that has hastened the arrival of this decision. Neil in Buckingham says, so Labour have just announced their support for a second referendum. We see the elements of a plan to overturn and steal Brexit from the public. Well, Neil, I think we've been seeing that for some time, actually, and it's not just coming from the Labour Party. Didn't you and Mogg both call for a second referendum? Buster, I said if we have to have a second referendum, we'll face up to it, accept it, get on with it, and win it by a bigger margin. I've never wanted a second referendum, but if it comes, I'm prepared mentally to accept it. But you know something? What's really interesting, when YouGov polled this a few weeks ago, a second referendum was only supported as the first choice by 8% of the population. I think what Labour are doing tonight in their parliamentary meeting is once again showing how completely out of touch Westminster is with reality. Doug is a new caller from Croydon. Good evening, Doug.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Welcome to the show. I'm well, thank you. So, is this the right thing for Labour?
Well, for Labour, anything's possible. I mean, I can't believe what they're going to try next. But, yeah, for Labour, they'll try anything.
But is it the right thing? All right, Doug, let me ask you a different question. Would it be the right thing for the country to have a second referendum?
No, of course it's not. We've had it. If they win, what's that? 2-1, 3-1? What's the question going to be? There's too many permutations. It's just ridiculous what they keep on saying. Shall we have a referendum? What are they going to ask? In, out, shake it all about. It's ridiculous.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's going to tell the Parliamentary Labour Party tonight that it's to prevent a damaging Tory Brexit, and they're saying that. What they're saying, Doug, is that if we left on a WTO deal, it would be a catastrophe for Britain. Are you scared, Doug?
As well. No, I can't wait. I can't wait to get that. How is it a Tory Brexit? How does it work out to be a Tory Brexit? It's a British Brexit, not a Tory Brexit.
Well, the Tories are in. Well, the Tories are in government, aren't they? And I guess he's playing party politics. So, anyway, Doug, you're clear. They've done the wrong thing. Mike in Newham, is it the right thing?
No, I don't think it is, actually. I think I'm a Labour supporter, and I voted Remain at the last election, at the referendum. So, to be honest, I'm a little bit gutted because I think... I just think it's the wrong idea. The only thing I can think is that they've thought is that it might not go through Parliament. So at least if it doesn't, at least Labour can say, look, we've tried everything to stop a no-deal Brexit.
It's a hell of a gamble, Mike, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. And I mean. Apparently, you've seen the last time, but the amendment didn't go through the last time, so I can't see how support for one will go through this time. But what I would say to, I'm still going to vote Labour, because I think at the end of the day, if you look at the reasons why people voted Brexit, things to do with like austerity and stuff like that, if you get a Tory Brexit, I mean, there is such a thing as a Tory Brexit, because the Tories want to use it to deregulate standards on particular foods and
says who? Right. Says who? Michael Gove says Michael Gove says the opposite of that, Mike.
Well, when people talk about having the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg, and why do they? Because they're free marketeers, and if you believe in that, fine, and they want to get rid of the red tape. But the thing is, if you don't, if you think having regulations on like fire safety things, you look at Grenfell and stuff like that happen because of lots of
Mike, there are some of us, Mike, that think that actually we're a big enough, good enough country to make our own fire regulations without Mr. Juncker doing it for us. But Mike, I put it to you that this is a disaster for Labour in the marginals.
Do you know what? You might be right. The only thing I can see that I would be happy for if Labour got in, if Labour promised their manifesto, they were going to offer a referendum on terms of a real Brexit, because even this customs union stuff, it's not actual really Brexit. If you want a proper Brexit, which may end up in putting controls on financial controls.
But Mike, that might be in 2022. The next election's not due to 2022.
Well, I don't see that, because the government, they don't even have a... Well,
I tell you what, Mike,
they don't have a majority.
The real answer is none of us know. Thank you for your call. The one thing I do know is that an extension to Article 50 is now an odds-on favourite, as I've thought for some time. You listen to the Nigel Farage Show. It's 16 minutes past 6. Time for the news headlines with Philip Chryssikos. A big shift within the last hour in Labour's position, as tonight the Parliamentary Labour Party will be talking with Jeremy Corbyn and saying they are going not only to back the Cooper Amendment, which says that Article 50 should be extended if Mrs May's deal doesn't pass, but they're also going to back an amendment, maybe even put their own one down for a second referendum. Are they doing the right thing? I think electorally for them, with 5 million people who voted Brexit and then voted for Jeremy Corbyn a year later, I think for them it's a disaster. A majority of seats in England, of Labour seats, big majority, voted Leave, and in the marginals that he needs to win, nearly every single one of them is a Leave constituency. But the North London-dominated Labour Party will be happy tonight. They'll be celebrating, but they're out of touch with the country outside the M25. That is my view. Now, on this question of what I believe to be certain, I've been talking really against my own book for a long time. I've believed for ages that an extension for Article 50 was the likely outcome of all of this. This was me talking at LBC last year. Parliament will agree to delay the date we leave the European Union by another year. I hope I'm really, really badly wrong, but I feel a second referendum is getting closer. Well, I'm afraid I do think that this whole business of delay is getting more certain. And today, at a summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, the unelected, I wanted to say that, President of the European Council, that charming man Donald Tusk, had this to say after his meetings with the British Prime Minister.
Prime Minister May and I discussed yesterday a lot of issues, including the legal and procedural context of a potential extension. The less time there is until the 29th of March, the greater is the likelihood of an extension. And this is an objective fact, not our intention, not our plan, but an objective fact. I believe that in the situation we are in, an extension would be a rational solution.
A rational solution. Well, actually, what Tusk really means is it'd be rational just not to leave at all. And there was some talk, front page of The Guardian today, that European leaders saying that they're going to tell Mrs May, well, I tell you what, you don't really need to leave until the end of 2021, so you can leave it really effectively till the next general election. Well, that's where we appear to be going. And this was Mrs May responding.
An extension to Article 50, a delay in this process, doesn't deliver a decision in Parliament. It doesn't deliver a deal. What it does is precisely what the word delay says. And I think that any extension of Article 50, in that sense, isn't addressing the issues. We have it within our grasp. As I've just said, I've had a real sense from the meetings I've had here, conversations I've had with EU leaders in recent days, a real sense that we can achieve that deal. It's within our grasp to leave with a deal on the 29th of March, and that's where all of my energies are going to be focused.
Have you noticed the change of language? From the absolute certitude of we are leaving on March the 29th, said over and over and over, and now she says it's within our grasp and it's our intention to leave on March the 29th. And I think what will happen in the end is Mrs May will give in to this and say it wasn't my fault, Gov. Now, what she could have said there in Sharm el-Sheikh was, well, actually, whatever anybody says, we are leaving on March the 29th because we have the legislation in place and we don't intend to change it. So therefore, Mr Tusk, you'd better give us a better deal. She hasn't done that, and I think we're getting very close to understanding as a country the truth about our Prime Minister. A lot of you out there have tried to give her the benefit of the doubt throughout all of this, but actually she never really wanted a clean, true Brexit. Back to Labour. Have they done the right thing? I think it's the wrong thing for the country. I think a second referendum would be awful. It would be so divisive, it would be terrible, and probably, frankly, violent too. I suspect the result would be the same, if not a slightly bigger win for the Leave side, and they probably still wouldn't listen. And I think for Labour, electorally in the marginals, it is a catastrophic decision. That's my view. Mike is a new caller from Bournemouth. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Nigel. I'd just like to say to all the 17.25 million voters in the People's Referendum that you are being completely ignored by both major parties. Your vote means nothing. I gave up on Labour several years ago, and I'm about to give up on Tories as well. I've had enough of them.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone, Mike. I mean, would betrayal be the right word?
More than that, yeah. I mean, if you've got a prisoner in chains, which we have been to the EU for the last 40 years, he doesn't say, oh, what's going to happen when I'm free? He just says, I want to be free.
Yes, no, I like that. And Mike, I mean, are you a long-term Eurosceptic, or is this a sort of thing?
Well, I voted for UKIP and supported UKIP for many years, and it's a great pity that they never continued once you'd got your referendum.
Well, you could argue a lot of things. I have to say, Mike, when 498 MPs voted for Article 50, even I thought maybe that was it. It was done, because they surely couldn't break that promise. But, Mike, your disenchantment with both is all too familiar. Oh, I love this. I love this SMS. Let's be honest, Nigel. The 17.4 million people didn't know what they were voting for. They're not thick. They were just ill-informed. So let's recommunicate intelligently this time and cast another vote to put this to bed. There's no name on it. It could well be Tony Blair, couldn't it? You know, really, come on, grow up, everybody. Come to your senses. We want Mr. Juncker running this country, not you, the voters, really. Enough. There's something about this tone that I just think's very arrogant. Paul says, this proves that Starmer runs the show, a total disgrace and out of touch. No more referendums. We voted to leave. I'm sick of this lot, says Anne in Blackburn. It's a no-brainer, Nigel. Going against so many Leave constituencies is suicide, says Alan in Devon. I have to say, I think that is absolutely right. I think this for the Labour Party is not good news. Let's go to James, who's calling from Leeds. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Yeah, we've spoken before. You're a Labour man, James, aren't you?
Yes, we have, yes.
Yeah.
Not for much longer.
Oh, really?
I thought Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't go this way. Sadly, he's caved in. And sadly, he's betrayed the North. The Northern constituencies who voted to leave have been completely betrayed.
Do you think, James, I mean, as a Labour man, do you think that Corbyn's effectively been forced into this by the parliamentary party, by the threat of further defections, by the influence of Keir Starmer and indeed even Tom Watson over the last few days?
I do, and sadly, he's caved in to save his own leadership. That's my opinion.
Yes.
Last week I did tell you that he didn't, that I supported him, but now this is just...
And that's why I was so pleased you called again. And we James, we generally have, most of our callers are new callers, but when someone like you, who was supporting him so clearly last week, comes back to me. So what is it, James, give me your view of what this means for Labour's prospects of picking up marginal seats in the north of England.
They've got no chance.
No chance?
Absolutely no chance. No chance. I doubt the Tories have either. A lot of people will just stop voting now. Both parties are just outrageous.
James, I think that is a very, very common theme. And if people give up totally on the democratic process, then some of those that predict that people might turn to street violence and whatever might be proven true, which would be a bad thing. James, thank you. Some real passion there from James in Leeds. He was on the phone last week defending Corbyn. He's decided he's had enough of Labour because of this decision that's going to get made at the Parliamentary Labour Party tonight. They're out of touch with Leeds and with much of the rest of the country, in my view, and certainly in James's view. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:30 in time for the news with Philip Crissack. Labour this Wednesday night will back an amendment supporting a second referendum. We don't know the terms of that referendum, and we don't know whether it's a referendum against a no-deal Brexit. There are more details to find out, but it is a very big shift in Labour's position under a Labour leader who said again and again he didn't want a second referendum. And while we're talking about the Labour leader, an announcement today from the Home Secretary Sajid Javid that the Iranian-backed Hezbollah group are now to be subject to a blanket ban under terror laws. Anybody from the UK who's found to be a member of it will not only have committed a criminal offence, but they potentially face a prison sentence of up to 10 years. And of course this is very relevant to Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, here he was in 2009 talking about Hezbollah.
Tomorrow evening it will be my pleasure and my honour to host an event in Parliament where our friends from Hezbollah will be speaking. I'd also invited friends from Hamas to come and speak as well. Unfortunately, the Israelis would not allow them to travel here, so it's going to be only friends from Hezbollah. So far as I'm concerned, that is absolutely the right function of using parliamentary facilities to invite people from other parts of the world.
When he was confronted about this by Channel 4 News, about his use of the word friends, this is how he reacted.
Why did you call Hamas and Hezbollah your friends?
What I did was spoke at a meeting in which I said I wanted all people involved in the Middle East issue to come together and be able to have a discussion, to be able to discuss. Can you allow me to finish? Do you mind?
I asked you a question and you're ignoring it.
No, I'm not ignoring the question. If you'd give me a minute, I'll answer it. The point is this. Listen for a minute, if you don't mind. I spoke at a meeting about the Middle East crisis in Parliament. And there were people there from Hezbollah. And I said, I welcomed our friends from Hezbollah to have a discussion and a debate. And I said I wanted Hamas to be part of that debate. I have met Hamas in Lebanon, and I've met Hezbollah in this country in Lebanon. I've also met...
So are they your friends or not?
Can I finish?
Really? Are they your friends or not?
Can I finish? I've also met...
Well, you can't if it's a long answer.
Look, the issue is this. You are not prepared to discuss the whole issue of the Middle East. You're not prepared to discuss the wider question. The wider question is Hamas... Hezbollah are part of a peace process. Even the former head of Mossad says that there has to be talks involving Hamas. I've also had discussions with people from the right in Israeli politics who have the same view, possibly, that the state of Israel should extend from the river to the sea, as it is claimed people from the Palestinian side do.
And I'm very happy for you to make all of that clear. But I'm saying you use these words, friends. Now, are you saying they're not your friends? Or are you saying they are your friends?
I'm saying that people I talk to, I use it in a collective way, saying our friends we're prepared to talk to. Does it mean I agree with Hamas and what it does? No. Does it mean I agree with Hezbollah and what they do? No.
I've never heard Jeremy Corbyn get so agitated and angry in any interview he's ever done. But of course there is a pattern with Corbyn, isn't there? You know, friendly with Sinn Féin, IRA, friendly with Hamas, friendly with Hezbollah, and I thought he really was badly caught out. Now, he did later, when grilled with the Home Affairs Select Committee, say it was inclusive language I used, which with hindsight I'd rather not have used. But, Jeremy, please be careful if you are a member or supporter of Hezbollah, do cancel that membership, or you could, because of our tough new Home Secretary, who clearly wants to be the next Tory Prime Minister, you could face up to 10 years in jail, and that would be a terrible shame. Now, back to the referendum, back to the Labour call to back an amendment this Wednesday supporting a second referendum. Is it the right thing to do? I'm going to Bromley to speak to Valentine. Good evening, Valentine.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. Always a pleasure when we speak.
I know, we've spoken before, so has he got this right, Valentine? I mean, you are a Remainer, aren't you?
I am indeed, and I'm absolutely ecstatic. This is the best news in the last, 3 years I could ever have hoped for. Finally, in my humble opinion, we have proper opposition in this country, and we can now, I hope that this process will be now scrutinised properly in terms of a Brexit or a no Brexit based on a Remain option on the second referendum.
So we now, Valentine, just to be absolutely clear here, we now have proper opposition to a democratic result, yeah?
Well, yes, we have proper opposition.
Right.
And what I want to say, leading on from
But that's a bit shocking, now, Valentine, isn't it? I mean, why?
No.
I mean, why would you want to oppose a full, free and fair vote of the British people? And it was made perfectly clear to them, made perfectly clear to them that whatever the result, it would be implemented. I mean, isn't there something wrong with our system if you want to overturn that?
No, well, there's definitely something wrong with our system in the way that result came about. And it's just unfortunate that has now led on, because we've been haunted by the genesis of the way the referendum was carried out. Now, I don't want to row with you, but what I would say is you and, some of the other leading campaigners during the referendum in 2016, you promised things that were contradictory to each other. And we saw that in the vote in the House of Commons, where Boris and Gove voted for completely two different types of withdrawal agreements, and they were both leading campaigners. So as far as I'm concerned, before Theresa May ever took on this poison chalice of a job, like Mission Impossible 5, you guys literally gave her a job.
But Valentine, yeah, OK, there are different shades of opinion within the Leave camp. I accept that. But you surely must admit there's a hugely differing range of opinions within the Remain camp. I mean, do you, Valentine, support a United States of Europe becoming a global empire?
Well, look, I don't necessarily believe that.
No, hang on. But I mean, because if I listen to the French finance minister, that's what he believes. I mean, do you want us to join the euro tomorrow, Valentine?
No, of course not.
So isn't that the point? There are varying shades of opinion on both sides of this argument. But the thing that gets me, Valentine, is there's an accusation that comes from your camp that somehow I read out a text earlier, that somehow Leave voters were misled. And that's the one that annoys me, because actually the biggest misleading statement was 50 years ago when we were told it was just a common market. So if you wanted to, you could draw fault on all sides, couldn't you?
Don't get me wrong. There is no perfect camp here. Ultimately, we are both, me and you, we're both patriots. We both love our country. And we both want the best for the UK. We both want to live in a good country. Good. And the bottom line is, for me, this isn't about who's lied, who hasn't lied now. This is about, I don't want my country to be ruined, quite frankly. And I believe strongly that the way that the referendum was carried out on the Leave side, people were definitely misled, in the sense that people were told things like that it would be the easiest deal. I mean, if you go on, James O'Brien's show, he's got like a whole list of things that were said that haven't been delivered or have been said to be contradictory to others.
But Valentine, I could point you to the LBC debate. I do it against Nick Clegg, who told me a European army was a dangerous fantasy, and now we know it's happening. We could argue this on both sides. Valentine, let me drill in on this. You say you're very happy with this. Do you believe that electorally this will help the Labour Party by backing a second referendum?
Look, there are hard decisions on both sides, and everyone is going to be hit with fallout from not making people happy. Sure. And that's just where the referendum has led us. But the bottom line is, it's now about being patriots and doing what's right, as opposed to being politically partisan. We need to forget partisan politics now. The way where this went wrong was initially where Theresa May decided to ignore all the people that voted for us to remain. And maybe Brexit could have been deliverable if there was a coalition or some type of committee set up. But the way she did it, she ignored us, and she was punished in the general election.
I admire your optimism. But I tell you what, my political experience tells me that this pledge is going to damage the Labour Party hugely in those Leave voting marginal seats in the Midlands and the north of England. Valentine, we've proved the point tonight. We can disagree and be civilised about it, and thank you again for your call. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is now 6:45. Time for the news headlines with Philip Chrysikos. Labour about to back a second referendum. They're going to vote for it on Wednesday in the House of Commons. They haven't yet told us what the question would be, but there's no doubt, is there, that this massively pro-Remain parliamentary Labour Party would want Remain to be on the ballot paper. Torsey says to me on Twitter, apart from ignoring the biggest democratic vote in this country's history, I've no confidence a future vote would be honoured either. Ollie's more optimistic. He says, come on, let's have a second referendum so we can finally silence the Remoaners. I can see there being a huge majority for Leave this time around. People now see the EU club for what it truly is. Well, in terms of the arrogance and bullying, Ollie, that is true. But would the globalists, would they actually accept an even bigger Leave vote? I really, honestly don't know. Nigel, the people were misled during the referendum. They were told that the result would be implemented. I don't know who you are, but I really do rather like that one. So is this good news for Labour? Are they doing the right thing? And what does it mean for their own electoral prospects? Mustafa is calling from Barnet. Hello, Mustafa. Good evening.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. I mean, I'm just sort of looking at Corbyn, you know, and I've almost tried to be nice to him, Mustafa, because I thought he was at least, you know, holding the Labour Party slightly in check. But clearly, after all those defections and people leaving, he's been shifted to this position.
Well, to give you a bit of background about myself, I voted for Jeremy Corbyn. I'm a Labour Party member. And truthfully, I'm a Remainer, to throw that out there. And I was starting to lose faith in him. And it wasn't just me. A lot of, if you like, the younger ones, you know, 20-somethings, that wanted a new style of politics. You know, we were starting to regret our decision to put Jeremy Corbyn in power.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't back a second referendum. So as much as, you know, I think you've said before about, so even though I live in Barnet, I'm a northerner, you know, I was born and raised in Stockport and Scotland. And even though, you know, you do mention the 5 million Labour voters voted Leave, but you forget the 11 million people that voted Labour in 2017 that voted Remain.
Yes,
and
Mustafa.
I think it's a tough balancing act for both parties.
But it depends, doesn't it? It depends where those Leave voters are, and the predominance of Labour Leave voters is in South Wales, the Midlands, the north of England. And my argument is, you know, even if in Labour seats in London, you know, even if the vote goes up as a result of Labour becoming a full Remain party, that doesn't really help, because the seats they need to win to get a majority, they're going to be damaged by this, Mustafa. That's the point I'm making.
2 points there. One, that makes the assumption that a lot of Leave voters are, if you like, hard Brexiteers. So I, from the north, you know, places like, you know, in the past I've spoken to Leave voters in areas like Haslingden, and a lot of them were more sick of poverty, and in the nicest way, you know. These are Leave voters that, you know, would never vote UKIP, or weren't particularly fond of yourself, even though, you know, that aside, because they just wanted change. And having spoken to a lot of them, I think there has been changes to people's direction. They want, you know, a lot of these people wanted a revolutionary change in politics, whatever that is, because they could see that, you know, the average wages in the UK were going down, and so on. And I think there is definitely seems to be.
Explain to me, Mustafa. Explain to me. Explain to me. You're speaking on behalf of the 20-somethings, looking for a new style of politics. Explain to me how this country being run by Mr. Juncker and a bunch of unelected bureaucrats is new style politics in which you're engaged.
Truthfully, it's because working across Europe, we believe, will be stronger than in isolation. And I think this goes back to a simple point, which is globalization is happening. We can try and put walls up, but it's a gushing wall of water. It's gushing water, sorry. It's going to happen. it's like I work in data science, right? I work in technology. That if we don't advance our technology in Britain and stay at the forefront of technology, and that includes through having strong links with throughout Europe, also the wider world.
But that's a global argument, Mustafa. That's not a European Union argument, is it? That's a global argument.
No, but as you know very well,
what I don't understand, Mustafa.
No, just one last point. The European Union, the evidence shows, has reduced friction on trade and allowed that growth, such as in academia and particularly in technology. In my team, I think we have 2 Greek people, people from all over Europe in our data science team, who it wouldn't be so easily hire them if it wasn't for the EU.
Mustafa, I think Silicon Valley may be slightly ahead of us, but look, just very quickly, because I could speak to you for hours, but why do you not want to live in a system, a fully democratic system, where you can vote for the people that make your laws and in turn remove them? What is it? What is it about this European Commission model? What is it about this European Commission model who've got the sole right to legislate? Why do young people support that system? I genuinely don't understand it.
I think it comes from this idea that we think practically, as much as, there's some truth to what you're saying, practically, I don't see it as true at all. When you ask a lot of leavers for any European law that they would change, the majority couldn't name any. And that's because European regulation is just that. As much as it is overarching, it's to allow frictionless trade. And on the whole,
so forget democracy. As long as big business, as long as Goldman Sachs do well, democracy goes to hell in a handcart, yeah? Mustafa, I tell you what, I've got to let you go, but I'd love to talk to you for hours, and thank you for your call. Darren is a new caller from Brighton. Good evening, Darren. So,
good evening, Nigel.
Is this move by the Labour Party going to be good for them electorally in Brighton?
No, I think it'd be political suicide on the Labour Party. Back in the day, I used to be a fond sort of like Labour supporter, but there wasn't too much to really, in the way, vote for in the ways of different parties. Over the last 6 to 7 years, I've grown really despondent with the Labour Party. Yep. I've never really liked the Tories to begin with, and it only left with, on the electoral sheets over the last few years, Lib Dems. There's nothing really else to vote for in my area, for my constituency as well. I mean, we've got 4 Labour MPs in Woodingdean alone, on top of quite a few Conservative and Tories, and there's just nothing else in my area for us to vote for. And I just feel along the terms of that, it's going to really bring the country to its knees with the whole sort of voting. I was a Leave voter. I did all of my research before going out and do the vote itself.
No, Darren, you were misled. Come on, please.
Oh, yeah, I was totally misled.
And you've probably got a very low IQ as well, Darren, haven't you?
For someone with 9 GCSEs at A level and 2 degrees, I'm very uneducated. So yeah, I'm a total complete moron when it comes to not doing my research.
You've been a Labour voter, you've looked at the issue, you've voted Leave, and this Labour Party now is not for you, is it?
No, I mean, there's nothing really left to vote for. I mean, I would never vote Tories. Like I said, there's Lib Dems left in my local area, but what they always try to bring is...
Darren, your phone call sums up why I still believe that Brexit was the first earthquake. There's another massive earthquake coming in British politics. That is my view. Thank you, everybody. I think for Labour, it's electoral suicide. Hey, I'll be back tomorrow evening at 6. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick, but up next, it's Ian Dale.
Nigel, don't you think it's actually quite a clever move by Corbyn, because he's